Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I'm an independent knitwear designer who also makes videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description below the video where you will find links to all my social media outlets, where you can find my patterns, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, and how to support me on Patreon. Today, this is something I've been thinking about, talking about for a little while, and it's sort of an opinion thing, but I hope it's an okay opinion. It is what I consider to be the hardest thing to both teach and learn in knitting. And it's how to tension your yarn and why you should tension your yarn. Now, if you are an experienced knitter and you've been knitting for a while, this is something that you probably don't even think about, that you have forgotten possibly that you struggled with it when you were first starting out, or maybe you picked it up very quickly. But it's one of those things that is so touchy-feely that it's so hard to explain and so very personal to each individual knitter that it's very difficult to teach someone, and for a lot of knitters it's very difficult to learn. And it's because there's not a formula. There's not a, if you do XYZ, this will happen. It's like riding a bike. You know what needs to happen. You can say, well, you need to balance and put your center of gravity here and there. But until you're doing it, until you're feeling it, it's just seems almost impossible. And what this is about is holding the yarn in your hand and holding it under tension so that you can form the stitches that you need to form. There are two very common ways. They break people down into knitters into continental and English style knitters. Now, I know there are many other ways, but specifically when referring to tensioning yarn, continental means you tension it in your left hand. You tension and hold your yarn, your working yarn, in your left hand. And an English style knitter holds and tensions their yarn in their right hand. And now there are throwers, people who move their yarn like they're throwing it. There are flickers. Then there are variations like Irish cottage knitting. In continental, there's different ways. There's specific regional ways of tensioning and holding your yarn. You get into some others like Portuguese. They tension in a completely different way, traditionally around the back of their neck. I'm not 100% sure how that works, but it works. And that is what's really interesting about tensioning your yarn, is there's not really a wrong way to do it. As long as you are making stitches and achieving a fabric that you like and is what you were planning on making, it's not wrong. And don't let anybody tell you you're doing it wrong. But this video is to try to help you understand what tensioning your yarn is and why you're tensioning your yarn. So let's go to watching my hands. What I mean by holding your yarn under tension is how you hold your yarn in either your left or your right hand to enable you to knit. The way I do it, I'm a continental knitter, so I tension the yarn in my left hand. I go over my pointer finger, under my middle finger, over my ring finger, and under my pinky. Now, demonstrating that, I can't really show. So when I do it, I just weave it like this. And then it's been woven like this. And then when I turn my hand, you see that it puts this strand of yarn under tension. Think about a guitar or a harp string. You want to be able to pluck it. If you see how I can push down on it and it snaps back. What that does, let me tighten it back down, is when you insert your needle to knit, it gives you something to pull against. So you can pull your yarn through and make a stitch. The other thing that holding it under tension does is make the stitch that you've just made conform around the right hand needle. The right hand needle is what sets your stitch size. The reason why we have bunches of different sizes of needles is because you want to make bunches of different sizes of stitches. How consistently you tension your yarn, and therefore how consistently the stitches are formed around your right hand needle, determines how consistent your gauge is. Now, let me show you. If your yarn is floppy, and I've seen new knitters do this, right? So there's my yarn. And you stick your needle through and you try to grab it, and it's just really hard to pull it through. And then look, so if I'm just not even tensioning my yarn, if I'm just grabbing it and pulling it through, grabbing it and pulling it through, grabbing it and pulling it through, loosey-goosey, right? I mean, I can do it, but it's hard and it's going to fall off the needles a lot. And what you get is see how the stitch isn't conformed around the needle? So really, the needle size is kind of arbitrary at this point. You're not going to get any consistencies with your stitch size. Because if you look here, you can see how loose they are. And then when I was pulling it tight, see how they're hugged up to the needle? So these stitches are going to be willy-nilly size-wise. Now, let me try to show you English style or right-handed tensioning. This is one of my biggest struggles. And this is why I say this is difficult. Even as an experienced knitter, I'm a continental style knitter, tensioning in my right hand is a challenge for me. So you insert your needle and I wrap it. And so you got to hold it under tension to pull that needle through. But the hard part is keeping it under tension, but also letting it feed smoothly through your hands. Because if it won't slide, see how it's doing? If it doesn't slide well, see, and I have yet to come up with a good way of tensioning in my right hand. If it doesn't slide well, then you're going to be slowed down and pulling on yourself. And it's just, you got to keep that even tension. Now, there are knitters who can hold the needle, and as they insert the needle, rock their hand forward and wrap, they're called flickers, without ever letting go of this right hand needle. I haven't figured that out yet. Now, the most common way that I've seen people taught to knit, and what you think about, is the idea of you insert the needle, insert your right hand needle from left to right, and then wrap your yarn. Now, if you just let go of that yarn, you're not holding it at all, and you try to pull that through, it's just, there's no way to do it. It's like you're trying to knit with spaghetti. So you have to, at a bare minimum, hold that yarn so that you can pull it through. But now, holding like this, for me, I have a hard time with it. But you know what? If it works for you, it works for you. I've seen so many different people hold their yarn in so many different ways. But you got to keep it under tension so that it pulls around and sets your needles, your stitch size, and so that it is consistent and repeatable. So, and I have not figured out a consistent, repeatable way for English style knitting yet, for me. I tried wrapping it the way I do my left hand. It doesn't work. I know people who tension by wrapping it a bunch of times around their finger. And you know what? Whatever works for you. Like, take this and wrap it multiple times, and you can get, and then you're not having to, like people who just wrap it a couple times and hold with these fingers. There's as many different ways to tension your yarn as there is knitters. And I'm not even getting into some of the more fun and interesting ways, like Portuguese knitting, and different cultures knit and tension in different ways. But the one thing that is the same is that you need that tension. However you achieve it, you need that tension, because otherwise, again, if it's just floppy down here and you pick it up and lay it over and you don't hold on to it, pulling it through becomes a huge challenge, and you're not getting any consistency in, see, even there, I got to try to grab it with my finger. You're not going to get any consistency in your stitch size, and everything's going to go all wonky. So, I mean, you could do this, really, and just hold it down. I've seen people tension back here. It's however it works for you, but you have to keep it under tension. And finding that point, feeling it, it is just a feel. It's kind of like if you've ever learned how to drive a manual transmission vehicle. There's that spot. There's that switching, there's that balance where you have the accelerator and the clutch at the same time, and finding how to do that. It just takes time and practice to learn how to do it. And as long as you're getting a fabric that you like and you're enjoying the process, there's not really a wrong way to do it. There are more efficient ways to do it, but not, I mean, you figure out how to do it. But I really wanted to show what exactly the tension, what I mean when I say keep your yarn under tension. It's this boingy boingy. It's having, can you hear it? You want it like a guitar string, not tight. You don't want this like crazy so tight you can't move your stitches, but you want it to have almost like surface tension so that you can manipulate and grab it and pull it through and have consistently sized stitches. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you are a really new knitter, maybe it helped you a little bit to understand why you're tensioning your yarn. Maybe if you're a more experienced knitter, it made you think more about how to tension your yarn, gave you some bad flashbacks to when you were learning. I would love to hear from beginning knitters, and if this helped them out, in the comments. And for more experienced knitters, if you could tell me a little bit about if you had a struggle with this and how you tension your yarn, because it's so completely different. I love watching other people knit because everybody, they hold it differently, they do it differently, and somehow we're all together in this craft. We all do it in our own special way, and we make beautiful things. So if you like this video, please give the thumbs up, click that like button. And if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.